That's only what we
Okay,
read.
Padre.
Now the question is, do we have to read it or have you already read it?
We have to read it, Rangada.
Okay, then Pallavi, you can start, I think, if you have the text.
Yes, I have the text.
Okay, go ahead, read the para. It's
We
about,
must then, we must then, in order to understand the Gita's description of the work of the avatar, take the idea of the dharma in its fullest, deepest, and largest conception as the inner and the outer law by which the divine will and wisdom work out the spiritual evolution of mankind and its circumstances and results in the life of the race. Dharma in the Indian conception is not merely the good, the right, morality and justice, ethics. It is the whole government of all the relations of man with other beings, with nature, with God, considered from the point of view of a divine principle working itself out in forms and laws of action, forms of the inner and the outer life, orderings of relations of every kind in the world. Dharma. The word means holding from the root dhar to hold. Dharma is both that which we hold to and that which holds together our inner and outer activities. In its primary sense, it means a fundamental law of our nature which secretly conditions all our activities, and in this sense, each being, type, species, individual, group has its own dharma. Secondly, there is the divine nature which has to develop and manifest in us, and in this sense, dharma is the law of the inner workings by which that grows in our being. Thirdly, there is the law by which we govern our outgoing thought and action and our relations with each other so as to help best both our own growth and that of the human race towards the divine ideal.
it's a very, very illuminating paragraph because he explained to you what dharma is. The root is dri, to hold. Okay. So what are you holding? At all the levels, you have to hold that which is the highest ideal at that level. It can even be the social. Okay, he has told you that. He has given you three. Okay, primary sense, secondary, and third. Okay, he has told you. So very interesting. It is not necessarily spiritual. Okay, dharma is that which you have to hold on to, which is a law at the level at which you are. That's an interesting part. Okay? We'll quickly go through and see what he's saying, and particularly those three things. Now also we can understand how Rama is supposed to uphold the moral law. Sri Krishna is supposed to uphold the spiritual law. And Srivando is to uphold the supramental law. So you can see the three levels, okay? So even the concept of avatar goes right down to the fish. The fish and the boar and the half man, okay, all that. So it goes on. It's right from the bottom to the top. Dharma applies everywhere. It is not only at the spiritual level or religious level. So very clear. So we must then, in order to understand the Gita's description of the work of the avatar, take the idea of dharma in its fullest, deepest, and largest conception as the inner and outer law. Now note that even the outer law, that also is the part of the dharma, by which the divine will and wisdom work out the spiritual evolution of mankind and its circumstances and results in the life of the race. So, in other words, the divine is working out even at the lowest level. Even when you are coming from the matter to life, there also there is dharma. There are laws that operate at all these levels. The law is the dharma to which you have to stick. So, very wide sense. Normally it is used in the sense of religion, religious and spiritual, but not necessarily so. It widens the whole scope. The divine is working at all levels, even at the lower level. So dharma applies right from the lowest to the highest. Note the words inner law and outer law. Okay. So and also the words fullest, deepest, and largest conception. So,
Rangata,
yes.
the dharma is how do you say, dependent on our nature, or our nature is dependent on the dharma?
No, the laws. Our nature does not very often stick to the laws of the level at which you are. The dharma is something not related to individuals. It is a law, or at each level there is a law that operates. The law of the best and the good. Okay? So at that level, the individual has to conform to that law. That is the dharma. Okay? No,
Each individual doesn't have his own dharma.
no. Dharma is something very vast. Okay? The individual has to subscribe to his dharma at which level he is. The law at which he is.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
I think, Rangada,
yes.
what Pallavi is talking is about Swadharma. Each person
Yes.
has his own Swadharma and Swabhav. But Dharma
Okay.
generally, and here also is given 3 stages,
Yeah,
first, second, and third. So the
exactly.
first one, anyway, when we come to it, we will discuss it. First, he is talking of more individual.
Yeah.
So let's
So
go through it. But I think what Pallavi is talking is about
yes,
Swadharma and Swabhav.
there is any
Each person
relation
has his
between
own Swadharma.
Swadharma and Dharma.
See, Swadharma is the dharma at which you are, okay? But that depends at which level you are. The
Okay.
Swadharma can be at the lowest level also. Okay?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Take a cat and a dog, okay? It's at a very low level. They have to subscribe to the law at that level. This level is so clear.
At that level, it becomes your Swadharma.
Yeah, that's right. And then your Swadharma through all lives goes on becoming different. Huh? So it goes on. But also there's another point of view. When a soul is made, it is destined for a particular work. Okay? So that would be, you can say that that's a Swadharma.
I think that is it, Rangada.
That's a
Because
Swabhav.
when he has later on talked about Swadharma and Swabhav later in this book, that is
That's
exactly what he's saying, I think.
Yes.
That each soul is born with a dharma which he has to manifest over his lives
Exactly.
ultimately. And that is the Swadharma of each soul.
Yeah.
And by following these dharmas, we are being led to discover our Swadharma, and finally, whenever we can, we will live our Swadharma.
Yes, that's right. I remember very clearly that in the first year I was teaching in knowledge, that was 15, 16, 17 years ago, one boy wanted to do architecture, okay, and he was wondering whether that is his swabhava, okay. So it is certainly not the outer activity that you are doing, that's it. Swabhava. Swabhava is the soul character, the character which is given to the soul. Each soul has got a particular work to be done in the physical world. And you start from darkness, and then slowly, you discover your swabhava. Anyway,
So,
so
Rangada, the soul or the psychic being, there is a difference, no?
the soul and the psychic, I am using the word soul in a very wide sense, okay? Because the psychic being only appears at a certain level of the evolution. Before that is the soul, no? The soul is the undeveloped psychic being. It's a divine presence in everything, and it comes up in even human beings. The soul is often not developed into a psychic being. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, very much. Very. Many people, their soul is only a soul, not yet a psychic being. The psychic being has to be a developed soul. Those who realize, those who reach the sattvic stage. Okay. So there they have to understand. And when that happens, then you become conscious of your psychic being. So,
Rangata, can we say it in in just a way of putting it? Soul is something which is not yet, which is ambiguous, which is not yet condensed. But slowly, when it starts getting condensed, then a psychic being starts being formed. And when finally the whole thing is condensed and we are very much aware, developed, then maybe our psychic being has taken over.
yes,
Just a way of understanding.
Yes, you can say that. Exactly, you can say that. Because it's a vague and very diluted thing, the soul. Okay. The divine presence is there, vague and diluted and not formed. You are using the word condensed, that also is applicable. Okay. Yeah, that's right. So let's continue with the definition. Dharma in the Indian conception is not merely the good, the right, morality and justice and ethics. That's what normally people think. But it is also true that when you speak of the dharma, the good at that level, okay, the right law at that level, morality, just morality is at a slightly higher level, justice and ethics. So all this dharma includes all these things. It is a whole government of all the relations of man with other beings, with nature, with God, considered from the point of view of a divine principle, working itself out in forms and laws of action, forms of the inner and the outer life, the orderings of relations of every kind in the world. Now note this very, very carefully, okay? It is a whole government of all the relations of man with other beings, starting from the lowest, okay? With nature, okay? Your relation with nature, you have to, normally, it's very clear now, man has always been working against nature. We have been exploiting nature. We have been pulling down mountains and taking out the dhatus, okay? Gold, silver, platinum, all these things we are going on extracting and doing harm to nature. Okay? We are also not working with nature. We are often working against nature. That also is dharma. Okay? So, with yourself, with your, not the interesting thing, relations of man with other beings at the individual level, relations with nature at the cosmic level, relations with God at the transcendental level. You will see the reflection of these in all the writings, all the three levels, the transcendent, the cosmic and the individual. You can see the shadow of that even in this sentence here. Okay? So it applies to everything. The idea of the transcendent, the cosmic and the individual, very, 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 very often simply repeating in different words. So we have to see that. When he says integral yoga, he means exactly that. At all levels, you must know the divine. So very clear, with other beings as an individual level, at nature, the cosmic level, with God as a transcendental level. Considered from the point of view of a divine principle, working itself out in forms. So forms at the lowest level also. That also is dharma. And laws of action, not only form but also laws of action. What action is the right one and the correct one in harmony with the level at which you are. Forms of the inner and the outer life. The orderings of relations of every kind in the world. Every kind. So you can see how vast is the meaning of dharma. Okay. Of every kind in the world. Of course, we don't speak of the dharma of the cat and the dog. We only speak of the dharma for human beings. So that's why the idea gets a little distorted. So the dharma at the lower levels is usually not worth speaking about. But that is the real meaning of dharma. We speak of dharma only for human beings. But you're very clear what he's saying. See, every word there explains the wideness and the universal application of the concept of dharma. Orderings of relations of every kind in the world. Dharma, and then he has put a footnote, the word means holding from the root dhri. Okay. Dhri is very interesting. Even the determination of man also comes from the same root. Dhri. Dharyate. So, dharma is both that which we hold to, and that which holds together our inner and outer activities. So at the individual level, dharma is that which we hold on to. So we are holding on dharma at whichever level we are. And that which holds together our inner and outer activities. In its primary sense, now he is going to give you three. So that itself suggests the lower, the middle and the higher. Dharma is applicable at all the levels. In its primary sense, it means a fundamental law of our nature which secretly conditions all our activities. Note again, all our activities. Okay? And in this sense, each being, type, species, individual, group. So here also you can see how wide is the application. Type means again, and species applies at the animal level. Okay. Then the individual and group. So there is a dharma for even nation. Every nation also has a dharma. Okay. So has its own dharma. So you can see how wide is the application. Secondly, there is the divine nature which has to develop and manifest in us. And in this sense, dharma is a law of the inner workings by which that grows in our being. That grows in our being. Thirdly, there is a law by which we govern our outgoing thought and action and our relations with each other so as to help best both our own growth and that of the human race towards a divine idea. So now if you apply this idea of the dharma to the avatar, that's what he has said, to understand the working of the avatar in the Gita, you have to understand what is dharma. That's why in the Indian conception, you start from the fish, okay? The fish, and then the boar, and then it goes on one by one, the kurma, okay? So he's applying even at that level, the avatar. Okay, so that completes the paragraph, and so clearly he has given, but the thing is that it is so wide, okay, it has to be applied at each level in a different way. So normally we speak of dharma at the human level, but it starts at the lowest level and goes right up to the highest level. Okay, so we can read the next para now. Dharma is generally spoken of. So, who will read next? Pallavi has read.
Shall I read, Ranganath?
Yes, you can. You're also a Gita student. Okay, go ahead. Dharma.
Dharma is generally spoken of as something eternal and unchanging. And so it is in the fundamental principle, in the ideal, but in its forms, it is continually changing and evolving. Because man does not already possess the ideal or live in it, but aspires more or less perfectly towards it, is, um, is growing towards its knowledge and practice. And in this growth, Dharma is all that helps us to grow into the divine purity, largeness, light, freedom, power, strength, joy, love, good, unity, beauty, and against it stands its shadow and denial. All that resists its growth and has not undergone its law. All that has not yielded up and does not will to yield up its secret of divine values, but presents a front of perversion and contradiction, of impurity, narrowness, bondage, darkness, weakness, vileness, discord and suffering and division, and the hideous and the crude, all that man has to leave behind in his progress. This is the adharma, not dharma, which strives with and seeks to overcome the dharma, to draw backward and downward, the reactionary force which makes for evil, ignorance, and darkness. Between the two, there is perpetual battle and struggle, oscillation of victory and defeat, in which sometimes the upward and sometimes the downward forces prevail. This has been typified in the Vedic image of the struggle between the divine and the titanic powers, the sons of the light and the undivided infinity, and the children of the darkness and division. In Zoroastrianism, by Ahura Mazda and Arhiman, and in later religions, in the contest between God and his angels, and Satan or Iblis and his demons for the possession of human life and the human soul.
Okay, so further explanation, and it is so clearly he has told us what it is. But as I said, it is clear, but it is so wide that you cannot say that dharma is this or dharma is that. It's very interesting what he's saying. Now, he
When
explains.
it comes to each one's dharma, it is still more difficult, no? Because each one that is driven by the ego, no? Each one's dharma also.
That's exactly what he's discussing here, the adharma. When the ego comes in, it is the adharma. Normally, you follow the adharma. Okay. So, that's why now he is defining what adharma is very clearly and defining in a fantastic way. He is using not one or two adjectives, but he is using 7 or 8 or 10. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. Yes. Purity, largeness, light, freedom, power, in all ways. Huh? So he is explaining to us in all ways. Okay. That's exactly. He's so consistent with his prose. He has told us always. So now what those all are, he is describing. Okay. So let's read and also he's describing also in great detail the adharma. So that there is absolutely no doubt in them. There should be in the mind of what is dharma and what is adharma. So let's see each sentence. Dharma is generally spoken of as something eternal and unchanging, and so it is. Okay, in its fundamental principle, dharma is that which leads you upwards, and adharma is that which leads you downwards. So it is correct. But the dharma, when it comes down, it becomes subject to the law of diminution and ultimately distortion also. Remember that there is a limitation and a diminution and a distortion. So it happens to dharma also. Okay, so dharma is generally spoken of as something eternal, unchanging, and so it is, but where? In its fundamental principle. In the ideal, but in its forms, there you are, it's coming down, it is continually changing and evolving. Okay? And from the lowest level, it is going upwards. Okay? Because man does not already possess the ideal or live in it. That's where you mentioned the ego, and that's exactly the point. So when you are living in the ego, it is mostly the adharma that we are following. But the soul is there in everybody, and that pushes you towards the dharma. And what the dharma is, he is listing now, one by one. But aspires more or less perfectly, not more or less perfectly, towards it, is growing towards its knowledge and practice, knowledge of dharma and practice of dharma. And in this growth, dharma is all that helps us to grow into the divine purity, largeness, light, freedom, power, strength, joy, love, good, unity, and beauty at any level. At any level, all these things are there relatively, and you are going upwards. So dharma is very clear. That which takes you upwards, basically, in all these things. It could be even something just beauty also. Okay? Artists, okay, may not be at all, they may have nothing of religion or spirituality in them. But even there, the idea of dharma applies. The more beautiful you are, the more you are going towards dharma. The more beautiful you can create in yourself. Okay? So, very interesting.
But Rangana, one question.
Yes.
The ego also pushes us towards power and this thing. So that is not dharma. That is dharma.
No, when you speak of power, power can be used in a good way and also in a bad way. So it pushes you towards power in a bad way. So, purity also
pushes you towards knowledge. That also is bad way.
Yeah, that also, because what you're saying is very interesting. So I'm going to discuss this in the essay on the Gita itself. Okay? A Brahmin is supposed to be a man of knowledge, but it also engenders him pride of knowledge. Okay, when we come to that chapter, you will see that. Okay, so the four system, the caste system. Okay, Brahmin, the Kshatriya, and the Vaishya, and the Shudra. There are the proper dharma for each, and sometimes the adharma also comes up in each. For the Brahmin, it is a pride of knowledge that comes in. Okay, in the Kshatriya, power is used in the wrong way. Okay, and in the Vaishya, the possession and wealth is used also in the wrong way. Okay? And greed comes in. A Shudra, the loyalty to his master is suffers. Okay? All this is pointed out. So again the idea of dharma also applies there. Dharma is all in all these things. Power, strength, joy. Okay, there's a gradation. Okay. The joy also, take joy. At our level, joy is pleasure. But it should not be pleasure. That is more adharma. It has to go toward ananda. Love. Also, there can be a very human, imperfect form of love. And there can be a love which is giving of oneself with absolute purity. So everything is relative, even good. What is good at one level may not be good at another level. Okay, you can see that. So dharma is so vast. It applies at all the levels. Ego is that in us which pushes us normally towards the adharma. And the soul is that element in you which pushes you towards the dharma. The soul pushes you upwards and the ego normally pushes you downwards. In a very general way of speaking. That's why he's making it so clear. He's even brought in the religions that will come to. Ahura Mazda and Hariman is in Zoroastrianism. Angels and Satan is in Christianity. And Iblis is in Islam. Okay? So we'll see. We go back to our text. And in this growth, dharma is all that helps us to grow into the divine purity, that which leads you towards the divine purity. Okay? Largeness, light, freedom, power, strength, joy, love, good, unity, beauty. And against it stands its shadow and denial, all that resists its growth and has not undergone its law, all that has not yielded up and does not will to yield up its secrets of divine values, but presents a front of perversion, contradiction, of impurity, narrowness, bondage, darkness, weakness, vileness, vileness, discord and suffering and division and the hideous and the cruel and all that man has to leave behind in his progress. So that's a adharma. This is the adharma, not dharma, which strives with and seeks to overcome the dharma. There is a constant battle between the two, which is typified very much in the Vedas. Okay? To draw backward and downward. This, the reactionary force which makes for evil, ignorance and darkness. Between the two, there is perpetual battle and struggle, oscillation of victory and defeat, in which sometimes the upward and sometimes the downward forces prevail. And in the individual, that happens very much. And in the evolution also, it is sometimes upward and sometimes downward. And that's why Sri Aurobindo says evolution is spiral. It's not linear, it is spiral. Because there's always a fight between these two principles. This has been typified in the Vedic image of the struggle between the divine and the titanic powers, the sons of the light and the undivided infinity, and the children of the darkness and division. So you have the Diti and Aditi. Aditi, not twofold, so that she is the mother of all the gods. And Diti is the one that is two. Okay? That is the children of darkness. And so Diti produces the asuras, rakshasas and pishachas, and Aditi produces the gods. This darkness is there everywhere. The principle is there everywhere. In Zoroastrianism, by Ahura Mazda and Hariman. Ahura Mazda is that which makes you upwards. We don't have today Yasmin to tell us more about it. And Ahriman, the one downwards. In later religions, they contest between God and his angels and Satan. This is Christianity. Or Iblis and his demons for the possession of human life and the human soul. Iblis in Islam is a jinn, an evil spirit who tempts man, creates illusions, and see. Oh, I've got a leaflet for more. Okay, so that's it. So in all the religions, this idea of the dharma and the adharma is there in every religion. That's what Siddhi is 21. Okay, so we read 2 paras. We can read the third one also. We got 9 minutes. We can read. So, Shilpa, would you like to read? If you have the text,
Yes, Radha. Yes,
go
I
ahead.
have text. It is these things that conditions and determine the work of the avatar. In the Buddhistic formula, the disciple takes refuge from all that opposes his liberation in 3 powers: the Dharma, the Snagha, the Buddha. So in Christianity, we have the law of Christian living, the church, and the Christ. These 3 are always the necessary elements of work of the avatar. He gives a dharma, a law of self-discipline by which to grow out of the lower into the higher life, and which necessarily includes a rule of action and of relations with our fellow men and other beings. Endeavor in the Eightfold Path or the law of faith, love, and purity, or any other such revelations of the nature of the divine in life. Then, because every tendency in man has its collective as well as its individual aspect, because those who follow one way are naturally drawn together into spiritual companionship and unity, he establishes the snagha, the sangha, the fellowship, and the union of those whom his personality and his teaching unite. In Vaishnavism, there is the same trio: Bhagavata, Bhakta, and Bhagavan. The Bhagavata, which is the law of the Vaishnava, dispensation of adoration and love; the Bhakta, representing the fellowship of those in whom that law is manifest; Bhagavan, the divine lover and beloved, in whose being and nature the divine law of love is founded and fulfills itself. The avatar represents this third element, the divine personality, nature, and being, who is the soul of the Dharma and the Sangha, informs them with himself, keep them living, and draws man towards the felicity and the liberation.
And now in this paragraph, Swami is applying the concept of dharma to the avatar. Okay, he is explaining the connection between the two. So he told us 3 paragraphs earlier that we have to understand dharma to understand the work of the avatar. So that is he has come to that now. Okay. It is these things that condition and determine the work of the avatar. So at which level is the avatar? What work he has to do? In the Buddhistic formula, the disciple takes refuge from all that opposes his liberation in 3 powers: the Dharma, the Sangha, and the Buddha. The Sangha is the word, the collective discipleship of the Buddha. Okay, so that's it. The ones who follow in the Buddhistic path. The Dharma, the Sangha, and the Dharmam Gacchami, Sangam Gacchami, Buddham Gacchami. If you remember, these are the 3 powers. They go on chanting this mantra like. So Dharma, Sangha, and Buddha. So in Christianity, we have the law of the Christian living, the church, and the Christ. The law of Christian living, according to the Bible, and the church and the Christ. These 3 are always the necessary elements of the work of the avatar. He gives a dharma, a law of self-discipline by which to grow out of the lower into the higher life. So again, see how very clear it is. When you are being pulled downwards, it is the adharma. When you are going higher up, it is dharma. So dharma is that which helps to make you grow out of the lower into the higher life at any level, at every level, and which necessarily includes a rule of action and a relation with our fellow men and other beings. Endeavor in the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is that which we have to follow in Buddhism, or the law of faith, love, and purity, or any other such revelation of the nature of the divine in life. Then, Because every tendency in man has its collective as well as its individual aspect. So there you are again. He is telling you the idea he has given you earlier also. Dharma is an individual dharma as well as a collective dharma. So nature of the divine has collective as well. In man has its collective as well as its individual aspect. Because those who follow one way are naturally drawn together into spiritual companionship and unity. And that's very interesting because it's the same. With those who follow Srivam's path, there is a sort of companionship. You feel something that you belong to a particular group. So, because those who follow one way are naturally drawn towards into spiritual companionship and unity. He established the Sangha, the fellowship and union of those whom his personality and his teaching unite. They are all united by this. And Mother has also stressed that, that those who have come in contact with Mother and Srivamdho, even once, they become part of the group. Mother and sister are very clearly. And Nolida also mentions this because all the children who are there, who have gone through our knowledge course, there is a golden chain, he said, and there is a magazine that comes out precisely because Nolida spoke about it. It is a golden chain that binds all of you. You may not be conscious of it, but that is the Sangha in the Srivamdhonian context. So then he is also giving in the Vaishnava context. So in Vaishnavism, there is the same trio, Bhagavata. Bhagavata is the Bhagavatam is the life of Sri Krishna, the Bhakta and Bhagavan. The same three, the trio is there in every religion. In the Vaishnavism, there is Bhagavata, Bhakta and Bhagavan. The Bhagavata, which is the law of the Vaishnava dispensation of adoration and love. The Bhakta, representing the fellowship of those in whom that law is manifest. Bhagavan, the divine lover and beloved, in whose being and nature the divine law of love is founded and fulfills itself. The avatar represents this third element, the divine personality, nature and being, who is the soul of the dharma and the sangha, informs them with himself. You know the word inform, huh? Informs them means goes into the form. Srivamdho always uses this word inform in this sense, not in the sense of information, like a newspaper. No, there's always Srivamdho uses the word inform, goes into the form, informs them, percolates into their being, with himself, keeps them living and draws men towards the felicity and the liberation. So these paras that we read today so clear that dharma is related to the work of the avatar at whichever level it is. So 840 we have done today, and we have understood now what dharma is and what the avatar has to do. He has to maintain the dharma and negate the adharma at every level. Okay? So, Guruvar, everybody. Thank you, Ranganath. It was very, very interesting.